Stephen stood in the attic of their old family home, his hands brushing against the tattered boxes that had long been forgotten. He felt a sense of urgency, an itch in his gut that urged him to dig deeper into the past. "Alice, come help me with this," he called, his voice echoing off the wooden beams. Alice appeared, her blue eyes shimmering with curiosity. "What did you find?" "Just some old boxes, but I think there's something important buried in here." As they rummaged through the remnants of their childhood, Stephen's hand brushed against a frayed envelope. He pulled it free, feeling the weight of it in his palm. The faded handwriting sent a chill down his spine as he recognized their mother's elegant script. "Is that—" Alice's breath caught in her throat. "Yeah, it is." He tore open the envelope, revealing a letter that smelled faintly of lavender, a scent that reminded him of their mother's embrace. "Read it," Alice urged, her voice barely above a whisper. Taking a deep breath, Stephen unfolded the letter. "Dear Stephen and Alice," he began, his voice shaking slightly. "If you're reading this, it means something has happened to us. We have always tried to protect you from the truth, but you deserve to know. Your father and I were not just ordinary people. We worked for the CIA, and our deaths were not an accident." Alice's eyes widened. "What? That doesn't make any sense." "Listen," he said, continuing with a growing sense of dread. "We were involved in a project. The government was developing a weapon, something that could turn people into something monstrous. We uncovered a plot that could lead to global disaster. We had to hide the truth from you and from our enemies." Alice's hands trembled as she took the letter from him. "What does it mean, zombies? Are you serious?" "I don't know, but it sounds like they were onto something big." Suddenly, the attic door creaked open, and Aunt Andrea peered in, her short, sleek hair framing a face that radiated authority. She had always treated them with a balance of love and military discipline, a habit from her days as a CIA operative. "What are you two doing up here?" she asked, glancing at the letter in Alice's hands. Just some old stuff," Stephen said, trying to mask the tension in his voice. But Andrea's gaze sharpened. "Let me see that." Alice hesitated but handed over the letter. Andrea read silently, her expression darkening with each line. "You shouldn't have found this," she said, her voice low and steady. "The past is dangerous." "Dangerous? Our parents are dead, and we deserve to know why," Stephen shot back, frustration boiling over. "What really happened?" "Enough." Andrea's tone shifted, becoming more commanding. "I did what I had to do to keep you safe. You don't understand what you're dealing with." "Then explain it to us," Alice pleaded. "We can help. We can stop them." "Stop who?" The urgency in Stephen's voice filled the attic, echoing off the walls like a warning bell. Andrea stepped back, her posture rigid. "There are people who will do anything to keep this under wraps. If they find out, you know." "Then we won't let them find out," Stephen interrupted. "We need to dig deeper." The tension crackled in the air. "You're not ready for this," Andrea said, her eyes darkening. "You're just kids. Kids who want to save the world." Alice countered, her voice steady. "We're not afraid." "You should be," Andrea warned, her voice a low growl. After a long silence, she sighed. "Fine. If you're going to insist on this, we need a plan. We can't just charge in blindly." As they formulated a strategy, a sense of purpose surged through Stephen. He glanced at Alice, whose determination mirrored his own. They would uncover the truth no matter the cost. The next day, they visited the local library, poring over old newspaper clippings. The musty scent of paper surrounded them as they scoured articles about their parents, hoping for a hint of the truth. "Look at this," Alice whispered, pointing at a headline. "Mysterious car accident claims lives of local scientists." "Yeah, but there's no police report," Stephen said, chewing on the inside of his cheek. "No investigation. It's like they just vanished." "Or were erased," Alice added, her brow furrowing. "What if they were trying to warn us?" A chilling thought crept into Stephen's mind. What if their parents had been silenced? "Let's see if we can find Mr. Williams," Stephen suggested, recalling the name from the letter. "He might know something." "Are you crazy?" Alice's eyes widened. "He's a general." "We can't just waltz into a military base." "Exactly," he said, a grin spreading across his face. "That's why we need a plan." Days passed and they gathered intel, piecing together their parents' lives. They learned about a covert operation involving a chemical compound that could rewire human brains, turning them into mindless soldiers. The implications were terrifying and their urgency grew. One evening, while flipping through a dusty book in the library, Stephen spotted a name he recognized, Mr. Williams. "Gotcha," he muttered, jotting down the address. They decided to confront him, but first they needed support. "Who do we trust?" Alice asked. Her voice tinged with anxiety as they gathered in their living room that night. "Let's talk to the kids at school," Stephen suggested. "There are a few who might be in." "Like the nerds?" Alice laughed, a nervous giggle escaping her lips. "What are we going to do, form a zombie fighting club?" "Why not? We can call it Cedar Springs Zombie Defense Force," he joked, trying to lighten the mood. Alice smiled, her spirit lifting. "Okay, but we need to be careful. If we get caught..." "We won't. We'll be smart about this." The next day, they quietly approached a few classmates they trusted. Tom, who had a knack for tech, and Rachel, who was more fearless than anyone they knew. "We need your help," Stephen said, urgency in his voice. "It's about our parents. They didn't just die in a car accident." "What do you mean?" Tom asked, adjusting his glasses. "They were involved in something big, something dangerous," Alice explained, heart pounding. "And we think it's still happening." Rachel's eyes lit up. "Count me in. I'm not afraid of a little danger." "Great," Stephen said, feeling the knot of fear in his stomach loosen slightly. "We need to break into a military base." The laughter that followed was laced with disbelief and excitement. "Are we really doing this?" Tom asked, half in awe, half in terror. "Hell yes," Rachel said, her enthusiasm infectious. "Let's save the world." The group planned their infiltration meticulously, gathering supplies and information late into the night. Stephen felt a surge of adrenaline. They were a team now, united by a common goal. The night of the operation, the Texas sky was thick with stars as they approached the military base. Cloaked in shadows, they moved silently, hearts pounding in unison. "Are we sure about this?" Tom whispered, glancing back at the towering fence. "Absolutely," Stephen replied, gripping the wire cutters tightly. With a snip, the fence fell away and they slipped through. The hum of machinery surrounded them as they crept toward the main building. "Keep it quiet," Alice hissed, her fingers trembling. Inside, they split into pairs. Stephen and Alice together, their hearts racing as they navigated the sterile hallways. "Look!" Alice pointed to a door marked Research and Development. "Let's check it out," Stephen suggested, pushing the door open. The room was filled with high-tech equipment, and as they moved further inside, a bank of monitors lit up, displaying images of people in various states of distress. "Is that..." Alice's voice trailed off, horror written across her face. "Yeah, they're testing something," Stephen said, scanning the screens. "This is it. This is what our parents were working against." Suddenly, the door swung open behind them, and Mr. Williams stepped in, his presence commanding and menacing. "What are you doing here?" he boomed, his voice echoing through the room. "Get back," Alice shouted, shoving a nearby chair toward him as they backed away. Williams's eyes narrowed, and he stepped forward. "You don't know what you're messing with." "We know more than you think," Stephen retorted, adrenaline coursing through him. "You're the one who doesn't understand the consequences." "Consequences?" Williams laughed, a cold, chilling sound. "You think you can stop this? You're just kids." "Kids who won't let you destroy the world," Alice said, her voice stronger than she felt. "Enough!" he thundered, lunging toward them. But before he could reach them, the sound of footsteps echoed down the corridor. The group exchanged panicked glances. "Run!" Stephen shouted, and they bolted past Williams, who shouted after them. "Get them!" They sprinted through the hallways, adrenaline fueling their escape. The pounding of their hearts drowned out the chaos around them as they darted through the labyrinth of corridors. "We need to split up," Alice yelled, gasping for breath. "Meet back at the fence." "Got it!" Stephen called, veering left as they split into different directions. Heart racing, he zigzagged through the maze of rooms, dodging the soldiers who were now on high alert. He stumbled into a room filled with crates, the air heavy with tension. "Where are they?" he muttered, pressing his back against the wall. Suddenly he heard Alice's voice echoing down the hall, followed by a loud crash. "Stephen." His heart dropped. He rushed toward the sound, fear gripping him. The sight that met him made his blood run cold. Alice was cornered by two soldiers, their weapons drawn. "No!" he shouted, lunging forward. But before he could reach her, Rachel and Tom appeared, tackling one of the soldiers to the ground. "Get her out of here," Rachel yelled, scrambling to her feet. Stephen didn't hesitate. He charged in, pulling Alice to safety as they dashed down another corridor, adrenaline surging through them. "Thank you." Alice gasped, her eyes wide with fear. "Just keep running," he urged, pushing her ahead. As they neared the exit, the sound of alarms blared, red lights flashing ominously. "Almost there," Stephen shouted, his lungs burning. They barreled through the door, heart pounding as they leaped over the fence. The world outside felt like a breath of fresh air, but they weren't safe yet. "Keep running!" Tom called, his voice echoing in the night. They sprinted across the field, dodging searchlights that swept the area. The sound of shouting soldiers filled the air, a reminder of the danger still looming behind them. Finally, they reached the tree line, collapsing against the sturdy trunks as they caught their breath. "Did we lose them?" Alice panted, her eyes wide with fear. "For now," Stephen said, glancing back at the base. "But we need to warn everyone. They can't let this continue." "Agreed," Rachel said, determination etched on her face. "We have to find a way to expose them." Days turned to weeks as they gathered evidence, refusing to back down despite the looming threat. They contacted journalists, anonymous tipsters, anyone who would listen. They worked tirelessly, determined to unravel the conspiracy that had claimed their parents' lives. One night, as they sat around a table in Stephen's garage, a plan began to form. "We need to create a distraction," he proposed. "Something big enough to draw attention away from what we're really doing." "What do you have in mind?" Alice asked, curiosity glimmering in her eyes. "An event. A festival in town," he explained, excitement growing. "We can use it to gather people. Draw the media's attention while we slip in to gather more evidence." Rachel grinned. "I love it. We'll make it unforgettable." As they organized the festival, the town buzzed with anticipation. Posters decorated the streets and excitement filled the air. But Stephen felt the weight of their mission pressing down on him. "Are you ready for this?" Alice asked, concern lacing her voice as they prepared for the event. "Ready as we'll ever be," he replied, his heart pounding. On the day of the festival, the atmosphere was electric. Colorful lights twinkled, laughter filled the air, and the scent of food wafted through the crowd. But amid the joy, a tension simmered beneath the surface. "Let's stick to the plan," Stephen reminded the group as they navigated the throngs of people. "We'll split up and meet back here in an hour." "Got it," Tom said, adjusting his glasses nervously. As they dispersed, Stephen felt the familiar rush of adrenaline. The stakes were higher than ever, and failure was not an option. He and Alice slipped away from the festivities, heading toward the edge of town where the military base lay hidden. "Just like before," Alice whispered, glancing back at the festival. "Let's do this." They moved quickly, hearts racing as they approached the perimeter. Creeping through the shadows, they made their way toward a side entrance, adrenaline coursing through their veins. "Ready?" Stephen breathed. "Always," Alice replied, determination shining in her eyes. Inside, they navigated the sterile hallways once more. The humming machinery surrounded them, a stark reminder of the horrors they had witnessed before. "Look," Alice pointed to a door labeled Experimental Projects. "Let's check it out," Stephen urged, pushing the door open. The room was filled with lab equipment, but what caught their eyes were the screens lined up against the wall. Each displayed footage of experiments gone wrong, people in various states of distress, their eyes blank and lifeless. "This is it," Stephen said, his heart racing. "We have to get this out." Suddenly, the door swung open and Mr. Williams stepped in, flanked by soldiers. "I knew you'd come back," he said, a sinister smile creeping across his face. "You're too curious for your own good." "Let them go!" Alice shouted, standing protectively in front of Stephen. Williams laughed, the sound sending chills down their spines. "You really think you can stop this? You're just kids." "We're not afraid of you," Stephen countered, his voice strong. "Then you'll die like your parents," he spat, raising a hand to signal the soldiers. But before they could move, an explosion rocked the building, the wall shaking as alarms blared. "What was that?" One of the soldiers shouted, panic rising in his voice. "Get them!" Williams commanded, but chaos erupted as the facility began to crumble around them. "Run!" Stephen shouted, grabbing Alice's hand as they dashed toward the exit. They sprinted through the chaos, dodging falling debris and panicked soldiers. The sound of explosions echoed behind them, a cacophony of destruction. "Keep going," Alice urged, her eyes wide with fear. They burst through the entrance, tumbling onto the grass outside just as the building crumbled behind them. "Did we make it?" Stephen gasped, panting heavily. For now, Alice replied, her voice shaky. As they stumbled back toward the festival, the sounds of chaos faded into the distance. They had survived, but the fight was far from over. Did you get the footage? Rachel asked, her eyes wide with concern as they reunited with the group. Yeah, but we need to get it out to the media, Stephen said, urgency tinging his voice. The group rushed to a nearby corner, connecting their devices to share the evidence they had gathered. This is it, Tom said, his fingers shaking as he uploaded the files. As they waited, the tension in the air was palpable. Will it work? Alice asked, anxiety etched on her face. It has to, Stephen replied, determination burning in his chest. Finally, the screen lit up, a news broadcaster's voice filling the air. We have breaking news from Cedar Springs, Texas. Allegations have surfaced regarding a military operation involving mind control and experimentation on civilians. Eyewitness accounts describe a facility that has been operating under the radar. Cheers erupted from the crowd as the news spread, and for a moment, hope surged through them. Did we do it? Rachel shouted, excitement bubbling over. For now, Stephen said, glancing at Alice, who smiled back at him. We've started something, but we need to keep fighting. As the night wore on, the festival continued. But beneath the surface, a new battle had begun. They were no longer just kids. They were warriors for truth, determined to uncover the darkness that threatened to consume their world. Let's keep our eyes open, Alice said, her voice steady. This is just the beginning. And as they stood side by side, the glow of the festival lights illuminating their faces, Stephen knew they were ready. Together they would face whatever darkness lay ahead, fighting for the truth and for their parents, whose legacy they would carry forward.